So let's get started and write our the first Docker Compose file. So the first thing, so this is the exactly Docker file that we are going to use. So you are might be thinking, so why we are going to use this Docker file? Because this is the Docker file is necessary for running the application. But if you want to make connection to this MongoDB, so for that we are using the Docker Compose file over here. So this is the file is also important because without that we cannot able to run the application. So let's create the Docker Compose file. So we are going to click on this button and write the Docker. And one thing you have to remember, so you have to give a dash over here. So Docker dash compose and YAML or YML. Okay, so YAML or YML. So this is the main extension that you have to give to your file name, because in the Docker file we don't give an extension. So but in the Docker Compose file, so we have to mention the extension over here. So our file is created. So let's get started. So the first thing you have to mention the version over here. Okay, so we are using the version 3. So there are multiple versions like 2 and 3, and so there are a little bit upgradation from the version 2 3. So you don't have to worry too much about the versions for this application over here. So you have to just use the version 3. Then you have to give enter over here. And one thing you have to remember, so while writing Docker Compose file, so indentation is very important for here. So you have to specific a way to follow to write the Docker Compose file. Okay, so you don't have to worry. So follow me step by step, so you can able to write the Docker Compose file as well. So let's get started. So the first thing we are going to write over here is the services. So if you want to run multiple Docker containers, so each Docker container is known as a service in the Docker Compose file. So hence we are using the services over here. Then you have to give enter over. Shall I give one more? Okay. Then you have to press tab over here. So I'm just using app as a service name. So for that I'm just using app. Then you have to use the colon, and then you have to give enter over here. Then you have to press tab again. So first thing we are going to build this Docker file. Okay. So then we are going to build this Docker file. So you have to type the build. Then we are going to use colon over here, and again you have to give enter over here, and here we are writing the context. So what does context mean? So in our case we have this Docker file, so we want to build this Docker file, and hence we are using the build over here. So in the context you have to use a dot over here, because our Docker file is available in the current directory. So hence we are using the dot over here. Then you have to give another enter over here. So then we are going to mention our context. So in our case we have the Docker file as a context. So hence we are using Docker file and colon, and you have to give space, and you have to give the exact file name that we have. So we have the Docker file name. Okay. So while writing file, I have noticed one thing. So in the build, I have mentioned the context and the Docker file, but here I have to mention the both thing inside the build. So for that I have to use the tab. Okay. So I just give a space. So in the build we have the context, and inside the context we have the Docker file. Okay, so we have to mention all the things. So this is the proper indentation you have to follow. So then we are going to export the port, not the expose. We are going to use the port mapping. Okay, so hence we are using the ports over here. You have to give the ports and then colon, and you have to give another enter, and then we are using dash over here, and then you have to give a space. So here we are going to map the port. So as you know that our application is run on the port 80. So I want to get the access application from port 80 for my computer. So hence I am just using port 80 colon and port 80. So the first port 80 for my computer and port 80 for the Docker container. Okay. So once you mention the port mapping, then we are going to use depends on. So we are using the depends on over here. So as you know that our application is dependent on the Mongo, and one thing you have to remember, so you have to mention the service name over here. So in our case, our service name is Mongo. Okay. So once you mention the service name, then we are going to write the second service over here. So you have to just give another enter. Okay. And make sure that you have to follow this indentation. So your second service should be in the same line. Okay. So as you can see that, and here I'm just going to mention the second service. So the second service is Mongo. So and one thing you have to remember, so both the things should be matched. Okay. So then you have to give a enter over here and press tab over here, and then we are going to pull a image. So in our case we are going to pull the image of MongoDB, because our application is depend on the MongoDB. So hence we are using the Mongo here and colon latest. Okay. Then you have to give again enter over here. So then we are going to use restart over here. So what will happen? So container will be running in the continuous mode, so it's going to restart always. Okay, so container will not get stopped, so hence we are using restart and always over here. So after this we are going to export the port. So as you know that the Mongo application is run on the 27017 port, so hence we are exposing the port over here. So just you have to give enter over here, and I am using expose. Then you have to use colon there, then you have to give enter over here, then use the dash, then you have to give a space, then we are exposing the port the 27017. Okay, so once you're done with that, then we are going to attach the volumes. So volumes is when necessary in the MongoDB, so hence we have to attach the volumes over here. Okay, so for that you have to give a space over here, not the space, enter over here. So then we are going to attach the volume, so you have to type the volumes, then you have to give a colon over here, and then you have to give a space, then we are going to use dash, and then you have to give a space over here, then use dot / and we are mentioning as a data, then you have to use the colon, and path will be data / db. Okay, and you have to just save this file. So once you're done with all the things, and before running this Docker Compose file, one thing you have to be changed. So in the app.py, so as you can see that we have this MongoDB connection over here, like MongoDB : / localhost : and 27017, and this our database name. So in the localhost we have to change and give the exactly same name of this service. Okay, so you have to give the name as a Mongo. So in our case, if we use the database, then you have to use over here the database. So what will happen, it's automatically get connected to that service, and that is the beauty of the Docker Compose. So make sure that you have to give the same name over here. So we have to give the name the Mongo. So the Mongo. Okay, so once you change this name, so make sure that save this file, and again you have to save the Docker Compose file over here. So now we are going to build the Docker Compose file. So the way is little bit different to build a Docker Compose file. The command is little bit different here. So for that you have to use docker -compose, then you have to mention the file name. Okay, so this is the file name. So I'm just going to copy this file name. Oops, just going to copy file name and mention over here. Then I'm just using build, and then you have to just press enter over here, and within a second it's going to build the Docker Compose file for us. So as you can see that our Docker Compose file is successfully built, and let's run this Docker Compose file. So you have to use same command, and one thing you have to change. So in the build you have to remove the build, and you have to use the up over here. So just press enter, and as you can see that the Mongo image is pulling from the Docker registry, and within a second our container will be start, and we can able to access our application. So as you can see that our application is running, and so let's verify. So I'm just going to copy this address. So I'm just going to copy, and let's open the browser and open the new tab, and just add over here, and as you can see that our application is successfully running, and we get this message also, hello world, and this is the Python app connected to MongoDB. And if we close this application, and as you can see that we are not able to access this as well. So as you can see that we are successfully able to create the Docker Compose file, and we build the file as well, and we are able to run the file as well, and our application is running, and our application is connected with the MongoDB. And that's pretty much for this lecture. I'll see you guys in the next video.